This is the Giraffes Don't Eat Steak podcast, a show that brings you marketing stories, tips, hints, and much more. A treat for those who want to succeed in business or marketers who just want to learn.
Hello, Alex.
Hello, Erica. How are you doing?
I am great, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Awesome. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Simon Peat, who is a website conversion expert who I happened to hear speak and meet. Welcome to the call, Simon.
Thank you, Erica, and hi, Erica and Alex, and hi, everyone.
Hi, Simon.
So, Simon, before we started recording, you asked Alex about the yellow thing in the background.
I did.
And you were sharing, Alex, you said it was Oxford something, right?
Yeah,
I don't know
United.
sport.
I was just quite impressed anyway because not many people really know who Oxford United are. But I was just about to say I was even more impressed the other day being in Colombia, and I was at a restaurant the other day, and the waiter he's actually from the coast, so even like a really remote area, and he's like, where are you from? Where are you from? I was like, the UK. He said, whereabouts in the UK? I said, Oxford. He went, Oxford United. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Come on, that's ridiculous. I did not expect that.
I mean, no disrespect to Oxford United, but people would usually probably say the university, right?
They always do. They always do, yeah, if they know anything. So when they say Oxford United, I was like, wow, you must be a really sad football nerd, because to know that is next level.
So that makes me a official football nerd. Good start. Thank you.
Could have been worse.
Could have been worse. It could have been, yeah.
It could have, because my introduction to Oxford, we had a team meeting there. There were three of us, myself from South Africa, Bogdan, who's from Poland, and we met Alex in Oxford. And he took us on a tour of the city we'd never been in. But it ended up being a tour of Alex's life. This is where I kissed my first girlfriend. This is where I had my best pizza. That is the tour of Oxford that we got. So
it's a unique one.
It's different. That's the main thing.
It is. Normal tours of Oxford, you'll not get to find out where I kissed my first girl. So,
Absolutely.
anyway, okay, back to normal topics. So Simon, you and Alex have never met, so introduce yourself, tell us what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Simon, obviously. I run a company called Visiospective Digital Consultancy, which I set up in 2019. My background is mostly in the e-commerce space, which I've worked in since the mid-2000s. I've worked for a couple of big companies. Probably the most well-known in the UK is the mobile phone company. That was my first role in e-commerce. And as I set up on my own, my focus is to improve conversion on websites, mostly on e-commerce ones, obviously, because those are the ones that quite often rely on conversion in order to keep the business running. But the principles involved in conversion will hopefully work on all websites, not just e-commerce. So those for service providers and information websites and other things as well.
Oh, fantastic. So the way Simon and I got chatting, well, other than this talk I saw him do, was around how many people just say build a website and then go, oh, why am I not getting any leads? Nothing's happening off it. And they don't do anything else. And it just so happens, Simon, that last week, Alex and I noticed that one of our previous clients, still a good friend, but a previous client, has just launched the 5th version of their website in 4 years, Alex, 3 years.
Yeah.
Like complete overhauls. And I must admit, we were responsible for 2 of them. And again, it's because of the not converting. And so the solution that's offered to them by every new web developer that they meet, right, is build it again from scratch, right? You're doing it wrong. And so often that's not the solution, right?
Absolutely. I was when you said that it was the 5th iteration of the website. I was waiting to hear the time scale, and you might have seen me cringe when
I
you
did.
said it was 4 years. Yeah, I mean, if your solution to a badly performing website is to go and see a website designer developer, they will inevitably probably say, well, we will build you a new one. And quite often that can actually not only be not the right solution, but a worse solution than actually trying to evolve what you currently have. I've seen it. I've seen it in companies I've worked for where they've said, right, we're just going to rip it all up and start again, and quite often find that the new website, despite looking shinier and prettier, actually performs worse. Quite often because users of the website before can't find what they're looking for, and therefore get frustrated and stop using the service or the product or whatever the website is working for. So one of the terms I always use is evolution, not revolution. So rather than ripping it up and starting again, evolve. I mean, it might be that you evolve into a completely new website, but do it in stages and use data to find your way to that stage. Because ultimately data is absolutely key. If you do changes to a website without looking at the data, then you're guessing, which is probably the worst thing you can do unless you're very, very good at guessing.
I guess it's kind of like taking your car where if you've got a slight issue with the engine and taking it to a new car dealership and saying, I think there's something wrong with my car, they'll be like, well, just buy a new one.
They'll be rubbing their hands saying, oh,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got the perfect solution for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And your point on data, and Alex and I talk about this a lot. You have to know, number one, who your target audience is. Of course, I was going to say that. And then what it is you wanted them to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people that we work with, hence we don't do websites anymore, because they've got to start at that first step. And they've already jumped to the solution, but they've got no clue what they want people to actually do when they get there, and then they don't measure it.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting question when I say to someone, how will you measure success of any activity, not just websites? And I know you do more than websites, but how would you know that this has worked? And they're like, oh, it added value.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I mean,
lovely.
I usually say, in fact, today I'm in the process of writing a proposal for a potential client, and there's we're both aware that there's issues with the website. It's not bringing enough customers in, but we have both had a look at the website and said, well, changing this might be a way to go. There's certain best practices which usually will bring a result. But I've said that the first thing we have to do is to make sure that the data we are getting is accurate. They have Google Analytics installed on the website, but it's not really giving the information. There's having Google Analytics on the website and having Google Analytics properly installed on the website and actually providing the information that you need. And at this stage, in this example, it's not there. So any changes we would, or any things we test out right now would be based on guesswork.
Yeah.
Again. So in my proposal, it's very much let's get the data accurate or reasonably accurate. I should point out that Google Analytics will never ever give 100% accuracy, but what you'll be able to see is trends. And then from there we can make accurate data-driven decisions about how we can make things better on the website.
Well, it just goes back to what Eric was saying, doesn't it? You really need to know, like, what are you trying to achieve? Because if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then you don't know what you need to track and analyze.
Absolutely. And quite often, particularly with slightly smaller businesses, it might be that the website itself is fine and just not getting enough traffic.
Yeah. And that's the other problem, right? Are you making decisions of 5 visitors?
Yeah. Absolutely, which might be just 5 visitors that came to the wrong website.
Exactly. And that's where I get frustrated, is it's too quick. You haven't got enough traffic. You've done nothing to even push traffic there. Show me the activity that's making people go there. And you're going, oh,
Yeah.
we're not getting sales. The website's bad.
Yeah.
And going back to your example that you used, the five new websites. I mean, SEO is not something that I specialize in, but I know the basics of it. And unless when the new websites were built, they were properly set up with regards to the URLs, then when they made the changes, their SEO might have gone through the floor, and then they're starting again with regards to traffic. Again, that would be a big assumption. It might have all been done perfectly, but you do run the risk, if you do a complete change with someone completely new, that you will lose any sort of SEO or Google credit that you had in the bank, which would again cause a problem.
So in your experience, Simon, what are like the top 3 reasons a website is not converting? And I'm using that because we can debate what converting means, right? But
Yeah.
top 3 quick wins that people should look at first before they jump to a new website.
There's an old I can't think of the word for it, 4 letters, which are AIDA, and now
Acronym?
I'm going to acronym. Yes, that was the word I couldn't think of.
Oh, I feel better now because the other day when we were talking, I couldn't think of a word.
And this one, I mean, actually, so it's AIDA, and this is actually quite an old one because it's kind of moved on a bit, and I'm trying to have to remember it now. So it's I think A is attention, which I think is quite important. I is interest, D is desire, and A is action. I actually did a LinkedIn post this week which slightly tweaked what those were, but I said A would be above the fold. But again, it's about getting someone's attention. So what you should be looking for is if you're thinking of your ideal customer, what is the reason that they are on your website? And it's usually a pain point. It's usually a problem they need to solve. So let's use a very common example. Our old friends at Amazon. You go to Amazon because you think you need something and you know you can get it on Amazon. Amazon have just become such a big sort of provider of pretty much everything that you know that they might have the answer to whatever your problem is. You know, I don't know, you need a new gadget of some description. So the attention part of it is, if they come to your website, can they see usually within about 3 to 5 seconds that they might find the solution on your page? And it has to be enough then to keep them there and think, okay, I'll have a look around. Then there has to be some sort of proof that you can solve that problem. Now that might be showing the benefits of using your product or service. And I deliberately use the word benefits rather than features, because I think a lot of companies go down the route of saying this gizmo does this, and this, without saying how it solves a potential customer's problem. And that's very key. The other thing would be is proof that you can do it. And what is key is that people don't believe companies, people believe other people. So, and I'll go back to Amazon again because they're a really good example of this. The reason that Amazon, or one of the reasons that Amazon got really, really popular, is because they do reviews. And if you think about another really, really good example is TripAdvisor. If you're traveling somewhere, if you're thinking of staying at a hotel and you've picked where you're going on holiday and you're picking a hotel, TripAdvisor is usually one of the first places you'll go to, because they will have everyone else's reviews, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And obviously you can usually ignore some of the reviews. Great example of which is, you know, we didn't like it because it didn't have a gym. Well, you could have read that before you went there. If you wanted a hotel with a gym, go to the hotel with a gym. Anyway, but you can see, for example, you know, if the staff are nice, if the hotel is clean, if it's not noisy at night and things like that. So therefore, is it going to be a relaxing place to stay? Yes, it is, because people have said it is. And these are independents. They're not the company saying, or the hotel saying, our hotel is wonderful. So,
and for me, it's a bonus that it doesn't have a gym.
well, it's the funny thing actually about that story, I just digress a little bit, is that the hotel in question was actually in I think it was Luzerne in Switzerland, and it was up the steepest hill ever. And if they'd have really wanted to do exercise, they could have just run up and down to the hotel for about 10 minutes and they'd have done the job. Anyway, I digress. So basically, they need proof that you can solve their problem. So that will be, again, as I say, from reviews, but also, for example, if you've worked with really big companies. So you'll see quite often websites will have a sort of sliding
Logos
of panel of people they've worked with. And that's obviously powerful as well.
Is this still above the fold, or are we further down now?
I would try and put as much of this above the fold as possible. And one point on things like testimonials is I see it so often they're either hidden way down the bottom or they're on another page. They're a click away. And actually, if you have a really, really powerful testimonial, I would have that front and center as part of the sort of attention grabbing part of it. And then there's the action. So you've shown what you can do. You've proved that you can do it. Now, what do you want the user to do? So, obviously on an e-commerce example, it's like buy, put it in the basket, add to basket, whatever. But if you're something like a service agency or maybe a coach of some kind, it may be that the first step is to have a conversation. So it's, book a call. It's maybe download some more information, and by doing that you're giving up your email address, and then they're in the they're on your newsletter or your outbound email campaign, which then means that you can warm them up further for a purchase down the line. So those are the key things I would say. I'd grab their attention, prove that you can solve their problem, and then get them to do something. And those are the three things sort of squashed in together that I would say are the key things on a website.
Brilliant, brilliant. We've often debated, Alex, whether that call to action button should be above the fold or not, right? This is, what do you think? How early do you put your call to action button, Simon?
100% above the fold. I've actually got my website up here just in case I had any questions about it. And I have two, one of which is a sticky, what I call a sticky at the top. So if you scroll down the page, it sticks to the top. So that it's always there. I would always have it somewhere, because there's nothing worse when you actually want to do something if you can't find it. And there's a very good book about website conversion. I think the author is called Steve Krug, and it's called Don't Make Me Think. That's the title of the book, and that is absolutely key for websites.
I think I have it.
So they don't have, I've got a copy of it as well, which makes it really bad that I can't remember the author's name, but I'm pretty sure I got that right. So don't make the user think. So they when they get to the point where they're like, I want to buy, oh look, there's the button, click. So yeah, I've got another good example on that actually, which again was a hotel, which me and my wife had already decided we wanted to stay at that particular hotel, and I couldn't find the book a room button. Because I've since gone back and looked at we did end up staying there, because we decided we wanted to stay there to find it. But weirdly, if you scroll a certain amount down the page, the call to action, the book a room button, is the same color, so it just fades into the background, and I couldn't see it. And I'm on websites all the time, so I found that very odd.
Did you give them the feedback?
I did, and they haven't changed it, and that was more than a year ago. So
that was just rude. They got free advice.
I found their web person on LinkedIn, and I messaged her, and nothing's been done. So hey, what do I know?
Yeah, I think I also like the importance of the above the fold when we're saying we've got 3 seconds, which is 1, 2, 3. That is no time at all. You can't overestimate the importance of getting that right. Spending time on really understanding what is it that your customer is looking for, and articulating that in 5 words if you can. And so that, like you said, when they come to Amazon, for example, they know that boom, we're on here. I'm in a marketplace that probably has what I want. Like
the search option is middle center, because that's the part you came for, right?
Exactly. So having that, giving your customer that feeling of I've landed, and instantly, this is the place I need to be. The amount of work you shouldn't you need to realize that you need to put a lot of work into that to get that right, because 3 seconds is nothing, and as soon as that's done, you're finished. You know, if you haven't got it right, you're finished. They're not coming back.
Absolutely. And I think Amazon, another thing they do really, really well. And I mean, Amazon test things so often. I mean, if you have a really fine eye, you can spot when they're testing something. But the other thing they do really well is personalization. So if you go onto a website, they know the things you're interested in. It's very easy to see the last things you were looking at. So if you're in the market for something and you've been looking for it, you get distracted, you go away and you come back and look for the same thing. It's very easy for you to go back and restart the search again. And there again, I mean, I post on LinkedIn every day, and I'll quite often use examples that I've found where people either do things really well or people do things not very well. And an example would be Adidas, the sports manufacturer, who I have purchased a reasonable amount of stuff from. And yet I got emails for women's clothing. And I mean, you can tell a reasonable amount just from this screen. I'm not a woman. And therefore, I'm not particularly interested in the women's clothing. And along those lines, actually, they also sent me an email because I'm on their. I think I'm still on their email list for Mother's Day. And the mother that they showed must have been. All I'll say is she must have been a very young mother. And if they had any idea about myself, you know, I have recently turned 50. My mother is in her late 70s and unfortunately in residential care. So therefore, Adidas is not really going to appeal to me from a Mother's Day point of view. But one of the things that certain companies have done have reached out and said, would you be interested in Mother's Day? Would you be interested in Father's Day things? Because they know that once you get to a certain age, there might be something might have happened to your parents. They might have reached old age and passed away. You know, I lost my father a few years ago, so I'm not really interested in Father's Day. And that sort of thing actually will get the approval of customers because they are personalizing what they are sending you based on your life situation. And that's another element of personalization, which is really important. Not necessarily on the website itself, but it's all kind of connected.
Yeah, that's really no, I'm thinking about what you're saying because in order to do that, the data and the tracking must be accurate. So obviously with Adidas, they don't have accurate data on you, or they're just not using it, which would be super sad, right? It's worse if you've got the data and you ignore it, or they're just not tracking it, right? And that, I think, is back to the first point we started with, is you have to make sure that you are getting the right data points to be able to be smart about how you're communicating with your customers.
Well, the interesting thing with Adidas is I actually checked, and I'm not having a down on Adidas. I seriously, I have a lot of their products, and their products are fine, but they just shows an example of not doing it right.
If someone from Adidas is listening to this podcast, I will be so thrilled.
They're probably just at the point where they're like, you know, we've got quite a lot of cash and we can just do some blanket marketing across it, and the brand is quite a strong name, so we don't really mind peeing a few people off.
But the thing is,
which is not a philosophy in my opinion,
but what I would say to that is that also in the realms of social media, it's very easy if you irritate the wrong people to cause a lot of damage to your brand.
Yeah.
And as I say, I checked with Adidas, so they knew I was male, they knew my age, and so yeah, for me that was just really poor.
And these campaigns are not hard work, right? It's not hard to just flick a switch saying if male then send this. If like it's not hard work.
Particularly not for a company, as Alex said, that has got plenty of money. So they should be better than that.
So, so just the other thing that came up for me this week. So I often use a nail to define niches. I don't know why that came up. But anyway, so I'm saying you either have a nail in the foot pain, so it's someone who's urgent and they need help now, and you talk to those people differently because you probably don't have to discuss price or anything like that. Or a pebble in the shoe pain, that's someone who, if they've got a little niggle, maybe Adidas shoes, you need some, but your other shoes are fine. They're just a bit dirty. Maybe you'll get there later. So it's a bit of a niggle, and you talk to those differently. But I actually heard a different scenario, which I love now, which is around, well, it's around divorce, which maybe isn't that popular. But if someone, for example, is a relationship coach,
Mhm.
and actually when I worked in insurance, I worked in product development for quite a while. And one of the product ideas, we used to ask staff to come up with product ideas, and we'd incentivize someone who came up with a new product, right? And one of the product ideas that crossed my desk maybe 50 times a month, like literally that was everyone's first thought, is divorce insurance. Um, and it's very similar, right? So newlyweds will not have any interest in a marriage counselor, right? Like none. Or call it relationship coach, whatever you want to call it. None,
I hope
right?
not, anyway.
Even though there's probably value in saying, have you spoken about money? The things that do cause rifts in relationships later, there's probably value in having that conversation up front, clearing the decks, making sure your relationship is set up for success. You're going to have a hard time selling to those. The same with divorce insurance, by the way. You're never going to get newlyweds to buy that. They're like, no, it's never going to happen. La, la, la. Everything's fine. We love each other. On the opposite side of the scale, someone who is on the brink of divorce and understands how expensive divorce is and wants to stop it at all costs is going to rush to a marriage counselor, to a relationship coach to try and solve that, because the cost of that is far less than the cost of the divorce. And the same with divorce insurance. Now, in insurance, that's bad, because if you have 100% sales of people who are probably definitely going to have a divorce, your payouts are going to be 100%, and therefore your profit is zero. And that's not how insurance works. You have to have some people who are not going to get divorced to pay for the people who are. But in websites, this is where I think people struggle to get that top of the fold bit right, which is why the conversion struggles, because they want to put everyone in there, right? They want to put everyone, like I help everyone, right? I don't want to turn everyone off. So I want to talk to newlyweds and long-term couples, and I want to get that whole picture. And then it waters down the message completely so that nobody goes, yes, this is for me in the 3 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, one of the descriptions I have of websites and where some websites go wrong, and actually this is totally stolen. Actually, all the best ideas are stolen, right? But I can't remember
Borrowed.
I can't remember where I picked this up from. So I apologize to whoever told me this. But a website is like a spoked wheel. And the problem is a lot of website owners see the homepage as where everyone is going to land. So therefore, you have to answer all the questions on the homepage. If you have a website cleverly set up in terms of trying to answer different problems, is you have a series of landing pages. So your users will come to a particular landing page depending what their problem is, or depending what channel they've come from. They will land on that page, which will have the correct headline. So for the divorce insurance people, the people that are on the point of divorce, there will be a landing page for them. For the newlyweds, there will be a very, very different message. And the idea is that eventually they'll lead to the center, and then that will be the start of the purchase process. And it's kind of similar as well, as if you think about if you think about the whole sort of attribution of the shopping journey. So the person that's about to get divorced, or the nail in the foot, is going to want a solution, and their purchase process is going to be very quick. It's going to be, I need something now. They're going to purchase straight away. But yet the typical purchase pattern is, for example, in the modern day, you might see something on social media like Instagram. you're not going to buy off Instagram generally. So some people might, but generally it's going to get the brain going. And what you usually find is if you click on one of those adverts, you will see hundreds of the adverts over and over again. And then from there, you'll think, okay, I might be interested in that. I'll do a bit of search. So they'll go onto Google. So then that will be a natural. So if you were looking at Google Analytics, you'll have a social media, and then that same person will go on to natural search, and they might have a look around. They might look for reviews and things like that. And then then they'll be sort of like, well, yes, I do want this, but maybe I want to look and see if there's any other offers of it. So again, they'll have another search around, and this might be a day later. And then they might go onto the website itself and have a look around, but maybe not buy straight away. And then they might have come again from, I mean, maybe it pops up again on social media. So they say, okay, well, I'll actually have a look this time because I've done my research, etc., or they might have done another search. And this is where analytics is really important, because then you find out kind of how customers are behaving before they actually get to the point of coming to your website. And then you can then work out the sort of questions they're likely to be needing to answer, because the question they're asking right at the start of the journey, when they've just seen it on Instagram and they just wanted to find out about it, is going to be different to the point where they're saying, I want to buy. Yes, you've answered all my questions, I want to buy. And that could be another reason to have two different landing pages.
Yeah.
So again,
and even your call to action may be different, right? So
absolutely.
The burning nail in the foot guy, buy now, go.
Yeah, buy, please.
where the other, it's the opposite is true. If you put a read more option for the person who's dying, you've annoyed them. They're going to go find someone else who's going to help me now. I don't want to read stuff. I want help. Whereas if you put a buy button too quickly for the person who's just investigating, they're going to be like, oh, stop nagging me. I'm not ready for this. There you have to maybe have read more, FAQs, have a free chat to answer your questions. It's different.
Absolutely.
And reminds me of the story you were telling me the other day, Erica, about, I think it was like you wanted to buy Sales Navigator or something on LinkedIn. And you messaged the guy saying, I'm interested in Sales Navigator. And you had the call and you basically, I want to buy it. But then they just kept following the script about telling you about why you need to get Sales Navigator and stuff like that. And you're just like, I want to buy. And just never got to, you couldn't give them any more of a blatant signal that you want to buy. And it's the same kind of thing, like you're saying, if you do not identify the type of people who are coming to the website and you're offering them an educational path instead of a buy now because they want to buy now, or vice versa, you're just going to frustrate them. Yeah.
And actually, I've experienced LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, and the user experience is not the best, let's say. I won't say too much because I might get kicked off it, but
but please, LinkedIn, if you are listening, speak to Simon about how to improve your conversion rates, because there we go.
Just me. I mean, there's a lot of things with LinkedIn that
I'm offering your services. I'm getting you a client, Simon. Stop saying no.
I'll have to put my rates up if LinkedIn come calling.
We'll block that bit out. So
we'll block that bit out. Block it out.
I wanted to ask you about pop-ups, and
there's definitely a use for them. But I actually saw a really good post about this. In fact, it was yesterday, with a web designer based in the US. And he was talking about going through the checkout process. And you'll quite often see when you're on an e-commerce website, if you kind of move towards the exit button, quite often the website will effectively panic and throw an offer at you. Which, while I understand why the website is doing that, if they are offering a discount straight away, that's crazy, because all it's doing is it's devaluing your product. And the other kind of issue with pop-ups is when they're just in your face straight away. I mean, obviously websites with regulations, etc., need to have the cookies pop up. But again, even then you can make it reasonably not in your face, so to speak. The thing with pop-ups is if they're helpful, they are valuable. If they're not, they're probably the opposite of valuable, but worse, because they can actually drive people away from the website. So they have to be very, very carefully implemented. But one of the advantages of things like AI coming forward is that there are tools which will use AI to judge a person's behavior and probably make it a lot more accurate in terms of when that pop-up appears than previously, when you literally had to do it. Say, if someone pauses on the checkout for 5 seconds, throw this pop-up at them, or if someone hasn't done anything on the website for 10 seconds, throw this pop-up at them. Whereas something like an AI tool would probably say, okay, they've stopped moving the mouse around, so maybe they've been distracted, or it can tell that they're using something else on a different browser window, so therefore it's fine, they'll come back. So I would say in conclusion to that waffle, there's a use for pop-ups at the right and appropriate time.
Yeah, and thanks for that. And also, please do not use non-mobile optimized pop-ups
Yeah.
on the mobile. Oh my God.
We
That's
haven't
the
got onto
worst.
mobile optimization. Oh.
But the other thing that's terrible, and I'm playing this game on my phone now. I don't know why, but anyway, I do play it. But because they're trying to get me to buy, literally there'll be like 10 or 20 of these pop-ups before I get to the game, right? Like, and I know in the past, this is when I just delete, because after 3 days or 4 days of, I have to say no thanks to 20 times before I can actually play the game. Like, oh, this is too much, right? And then I delete. So I think it's about really understanding your user and having a balance. I mean, if their stats are saying that they get, they still get enough people clicking pop-up 20, fine. Okay, maybe I'm the abnormal one who doesn't like 20. And that's back to data, which we started with, is check your data. If your pop-up is getting 0, you need to rethink your pop-up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If your pop-up is generating enough revenue, if it's working, if it's not creating a whole lot of unsubscribes, there's no, not negative behavior, then keep it. But if it's doing nothing for you, don't stop it.
I mean, I think in terms of the adverts themselves, and this goes back to my early days in e-commerce, where our agencies that were doing things like display advertising, Google search and things like that would be saying, oh, look at all these impressions we got. So if you think about those 20 adverts, they're saying, oh, well, because it's got, I mean, I think because those usually, you can't close them down for like 5 seconds or something.
Yeah.
So it's got impressions. And the idea is that then the brand is getting into your head or into the user's head. But impressions don't pay the bills.
No.
So actually, and this is something that you can look at with regards to, how many eyes you've got on your website. If people aren't doing what you want them to do on the website, then it doesn't matter how many eyes you have. It's the clicks that matter. So
absolutely. Well, that feels like a good place for us to round up. Simon, if anyone wants to get hold of you, chat to you a bit more about conversion, how do they do that? LinkedIn, if you're listening.
LinkedIn is probably the easiest. I am connected to Erica, so you should be able to find me through her. But my LinkedIn, I think, is /Simon-Peat, I think. But I am on LinkedIn and I do post regularly on there, so that's probably the easiest way to get hold of me. Feel free to send me a connection request, but put a message or something so I don't ignore you. And you can find me also on, I do have a website, which is visiospectivedigitalconsultancy.com, and there are dashes between the digital and the consultancy. If you put Visiospective, if you can spell Visiospective, I went for the ridiculously long and complicated name, then you will usually find me there as well. But I would say LinkedIn's probably the easiest.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you went the same route as we did with our name.
Yes.
We debate our length of name quite often, especially when we have to send someone our email address. Then it's the
Absolutely.
worst.
Yeah.
Alex, anything you want to end with?
Yeah, understand exactly what your customer needs and give that to them straight away, and keep it short, sweet, to the point. And just going back to what Simon said about, I think it was the quote that someone said, I can't remember, but just don't make them think. The second they have to think, you've lost them.
Absolutely. 100%.
Brilliant. Any last words, Simon?
No, just thank you for having me, and hopefully what I've said has proved useful to somebody somewhere.
It's been fabulous. Thanks for coming along, and we will see you again. Till next time.
That wraps up this episode of Giraffes Don't Eat Steak. Thanks for joining us. I hope you found value in our discussion and got some new ideas to apply to your own business. Tune in next week for another round of marketing insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you listening. Catch you next time on Giraffes Don't Eat Steak.